Sorry about that. And hello there. Hello, Ceal. Nice to meet you.
Hi there.
Hi
Hello.
there.
Sorry, it took me a little while to find the link. It was a separate email. So,
It took you only 5 minutes. Took me 20
okay.
minutes for a call earlier today.
Oh,
Well, how are you? And
there we
where are
go.
you?
I'm okay. I don't think I mentioned to anybody that I recently had brain surgery. So I'm recovering, and it's, painfully slow, but it's happening. So I'm in Nashville with my son, and just, taking it one day at a time.
I'm happy to report that it hasn't affected your fluency any. That's a scary proposition, I imagine.
Well, there's, occasional gaps in my memory. But for the most part, yeah, I'm happy that I'm basically still intact. Yeah.
Well, intact, and I'm happy to get a chance to talk to you. So,
Yeah.
who among us knows how our paths came to cross?
Well, I was just thinking that I'm not exactly sure if this was the original connection, but I think we have a mutual friend, Barbara Popolo. Does that sound familiar?
No,
Okay,
to
then
me.
maybe I'm misremembering.
That's
Speaking
okay. That's okay.
yes, she's a very old friend of mine. She's a landscape architect in Boston. And I know she was familiar with your group.
That's okay.
So I know,
So,
yeah, that's one connection, but other than
Uh-huh.
that, I'm not sure.
well, Cole, when I ask these questions, Cole usually comes up with the answer. He has now reminded me that you filled out our survey and that you have some familiarity with biodiversity for a livable climate,
Mhm.
our, if you will, sister organization, and soon to be our fiscal sponsor.
Oh, okay.
But so here we are. So that's great. And Ceal, since I don't remember the results of the survey, and since Cole hasn't retrieved them yet, why don't you tell us what your background is?
Let's see. I'm kind of I guess you could call a veteran climate
Hmm.
I don't identify as an environmentalist, but climate ecology activist. My background, I have let's see, going way back to the early days, I did a bachelor's at UC Santa Cruz with under Dr. Ray Dasman. Don't know if you know him.
I can't say that I do, because unlike you, I'm not an old timer in this space.
Oh, okay.
I'm relatively new, but I do remember now from your note that you have a background in evolutionary biology as well. Maybe that's the story you're about to
Yes,
tell.
yes, yeah. Well, even before that, I got my degree from UC Santa Cruz, and Ray Dasman is actually the person who coined the term biodiversity. He was with the IUCN. He's very well known. He's, he passed away in, I think 2005 or something. So the more old timer people are familiar with his work. But anyway, he was a mentor, and then subsequently in the mid 90s, I did a master's at the University of Arizona in ecology and evolutionary biology, and spent about 6-7 years in the field studying ficus and their pollinator relationships. So I was in Judy Bronstein's lab, and she's most known for her recent book on mutualisms.
Cool.
So my focus was on mutualisms, plant-animal interactions, various things, but really mostly interested in ecosystem processes.
That's fantastic. So you're the real deal. I have a PhD in biological psychology, and I was always interested in the intersection between evolution by natural selection, and knowledge, cognition, and information processing, which I eventually concluded was a really interesting case of natural selection. And natural selection is a really interesting case of adaptive learning in nature. Then subsequently I've had several other careers. I became an entrepreneur. I was involved in actually a digital rights management venture that was inspired by evolutionary biology. Then I became a professor of innovation and invention at Rochester Institute of Technology. Then I became an online digital community activist working on this project called Enable. We're now a global network of volunteers using 3D printers to make prosthetics, upper limb prosthetics for children and underserved communities, and we give them away for free. And only in the last couple of years did I get serious about trying to apply some beliefs I've developed about institutions, non-institutions, evolution, and the internet to this big problem that faces us all of climate change. Mm-hmm. And it's really when I sort of latched onto that same body of literature that biological biodiversity for a livable climate has been pulling together, this notion that living systems cool the planet and stabilize the climate, that I sort of latched on to this notion that it would be really helpful if all of these scattered groups and individuals around the world who've caught on to the importance of biology as a regulator of climate could sort of get on the same page and speak with a unified voice and try to counter the dominant carbon narrative,
right?
Which I'm afraid is going to enthusiastically take us in the wrong direction if it's not augmented by this richer, more systemic understanding. So that's sort of the background to the Ecorestoration Alliance. We're now probably about 200 people and organizations. We have a number of initiatives underway, and we are, to some extent, realizing that our greatest strength is our ability to sort of establish connections among these various eco-restoration communities, and looking for ways to do that, and to get a chance to compare notes with each other and to try to figure out what it's going to take to get things going in the right direction while we do still have the chance.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, how connected are you with the upcoming Global Earth Repair Summit?
I'll be speaking on day 3. I've got, I think, a 1-hour slot, and Michael Pilarski, who's and Amy Samara, who are both organizers of that conference, are both valued members of the ERAs. I'd say pretty closely. Okay. Are you connected with that?
Yeah. I was in CBAC prior to coming to Nashville, and I did even had a chance to run over and meet Skeeter, I guess everyone calls him, and the other woman that you mentioned. So we had a quick meeting, and just wanted to do a little face to face.
I was wondering, because it sounds like you weren't.
Oh yeah, I haven't attended their prior conferences. I almost did the previous one, but other things came up. So.
Cool.
But I do, I share a belief that earth repair, there are many terms that fall under that. But I strongly believe that is an absolutely critical piece. And I also agree that, a narrow carbon centric view could be very problematic and create more problems than it solves. So I share that concern, and I come more from a scientific view, and I'm interested in how we can integrate more of the science into the boots on the ground. That's my interest,
Absolutely.
getting the folks doing all the, the research and using the methodologies, and they've got the technologies for kind of monitoring and overseeing things. And the things like assisted migration and some of these other methodologies that are coming out for decision making around climate change and biodiversity that I think could be really helpful to the people on the ground if they don't already know about them. I'm kind of a newcomer, so I don't really know the field yet as far as who's doing what and who knows what and who's connected to who. But that's kind of where my particular interest is.
Well, that's great. I'd love to learn more about both of these things. One is how you think the science can inform what people are doing on the ground. But I've got some hints about that, but I frankly don't know anything about what you're describing as the new ways of decision-making in connection with eco-restoration and that kind of thing. So tell me a little bit more about that, if you would.
Well, again, I'm not real familiar with how people are doing eco restoration, so I may be a little off on some of my assumptions. But some of the work I've done in terms of my master's degree at U of A, I worked very closely with Dr. Paul Martin, and he's one of the originators of the rewilding concept. He's a paleoecologist, and he's done a lot of different things, but one of the kind of formative papers he put out was about assisted migration. We have potentially, there's going to be a lot of isolated species with climate change. Things are shifting really fast, and I spent the last 8 years in Alaska where things are moving extremely fast. And so looking at those large scale ecological changes and how, what are like the keystone species, what are the most important species to protect and possibly assist in moving to, new locations. And this will be an ongoing thing since climate change is on a trajectory. But so he's done a lot of work. There's a web page that's got enormous amount of data and information that needs to be kind of moderated so that non-scientists can access it. So that, that's a potential project.
That's it's a potential project, and it's also a really interesting story. And I read a little bit about the symbiocene concept after seeing your email.
Oh, right. Yes, the symbiocene.
But that's a really great example of what one might mean by a symbiocene, is sort of recognizing that we're all in it together these days, and we're going to have to make these connections, literal and figurative, if we're going to keep it all going.
Are you familiar with Glenn Albrecht's book, Earth Repair? It's Earth Emission.
I only became familiar. I'd heard his name before, but frankly, most of what I know about Glenn Albrecht I learned in the last 10 minutes when I was Googling symbiocene.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's the one who came up with the idea of the symbiocene, but he also coined the term solastalgia, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
No.
Oh,
what's that term?
Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Well, he's an Australian eco-philosopher. He's retired now. I think he was at the University of Melbourne or Sydney. I'm not sure. Anyway, his latest book called Earth Emotions, and he's apt to coin new language, new words.
I got that already. Yeah.
Yeah. So right. So I tell you, solastalgia was a word that just totally resonated with me, but.
Can you spell that word for me? Or say it slowly? I see solastalgia. I got it.
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to still spell it, or
No, I get it. It's
Okay.
SOLA nostalgia. And I still don't know what it means though.
It's essentially, it's grieving, it's a grieving place, missing, the places
Interesting.
that you have connection to that have been, fundamentally changed, a sadness for, and it could even apply, I think, to the large, everything from a local small place to up to the whole planet.
Hmm.
But it's just basically grieving for the loss of nature. That's how I see it.
Hmm.
And, places and species, or whatever your connections are.
Very interesting.
Yeah. But
So I
so,
heard you
yeah,
say,
we got involved last October. Yeah, just a year now. I can't believe how fast things have changed. I started getting very worried that people were not understanding the rate of change. And part of that was living in Alaska and seeing firsthand how things were, the Arctic is warming 4 to 7 times faster than the average.
Hmm.
So I started getting really worried that people kept talking about climate change as still as it's something going to happen in the future. And I was like, hey, we're well into it, guys. So
Yeah.
I just started an online group called the Eocene Adaptation Network to sort of jolt people a little bit and say, hey, this is, looking at the paleo science, there were some really good papers that came out that basically said, we're already probably at the not Pleistocene. Sorry, I'm a little fatigued and I get forgetful when I'm.
That's okay. And we can do this in installments.
Yeah, we
This is
might
all of
need
great
to,
interest
because
to me.
it's been a bit of a demanding day as it is. The plyo, I believe, is the Pliocene. We're already at Pliocene levels for atmospheric carbon. And the conclusion of the paper was that if we stay on this trajectory, we're going to end up at the Eocene levels. And so that's why I chose this. And in our group, we have all those papers are posted. And I think it's very,
Where is this group to be found?
it's on Facebook.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah. So anyway, we're in the process, we're doing the Eocene adaptation thing, and I run across this guy, Glenn Albrecht. So we started a discussion, and I, read his book, and I really liked the notion, instead of looking back to the Eocene, to look forward to like where we need to go to get out of this trajectory, right?
Mhm.
So there are several of us that were kind of the core group. And we decided to rename ourselves the Symbiocene Our Evolution. So that's the name of the group. You can find it on
So
Facebook.
I am looking right now.
And it's pretty new, as I said, we just started last year. So
Cool.
um
There it is.
trying to put forward this new vision that Glenn kind of mapped out in his book Earth Emotions, and then he's currently working on a book called The Symbiocene, but I don't know what his publication
Cool.
is. Yeah.
Well,
So
I've just asked to join the group and the work group.
yeah, the work group, we're still kind of, not, there's a lot of things got put on the back burner with my surgery. Yeah, I
Okay.
got diagnosed with a brain tumor in January. So it's been quite an ordeal. I had surgery in July, and so I'm still recovering. So a lot of things just kind of stopped. If you might expect.
Well, I do expect and I do understand. And listen, Ceal, I'm just delighted to make your acquaintance. I think that your academic background and your interest in turning walls of scientific data into memorable and actionable stories is really important and is close to what I think is one of the prime functions of of ERA. You know, at the beginning, we became impressed by the fact that we seem to have three legs to our stool. We have scientists, we have practitioners, and we have storytellers like Judy Schwartz and John Liu and a number of other people. And, you know, bringing those three together is really important if you want
Yes.
any of them to do the work. I can't say that we've, besides providing mutual support and enthusiasm for each other, I don't know that we're, and that's not nothing, but I don't know that we've achieved any synergies beyond that. But I think that it's an important aspiration, and you could become one of the people who helps tie it together. So I'd like to give you a break. Cole's going to send you some follow-up information if he hasn't already. We're going to invite you to a town hall meeting. We'd like to introduce you to our other members. I think you'll find us to be an interesting group, and you can help us work out together what it's going to take to get people on the right track while we still have the chance. But if you'd like, we can end our first conversation now.
Okay, well, I think
I'll
that's
just-
a good, yeah, I think this is a good, you know, short and sweet introduction.
Great.
And I would be happy to join. You know, I do have to pace myself. But I'm very interested, and I do think that, you know, this is kind of the right spot for growing a bigger collaboration, because
That's
I
great.
mean, I'm in the middle, I'm in the middle of, you know, between the boots on the ground and the scientific, and I'm well aware of all the barriers that's coming out of this, you know, the science side of things. And we really do need to find build bridges. So,
You know, this notion that there are going to be an increasing number of isolated species is an interesting insight to me. It makes sense that areas that were continuous habitats are going to become patchy, and that, however, maintaining keystone species may well require corridors and connections and so on. I'll hang on to that also. I think that's a
Yeah.
really important idea.
well, yeah, there's a whole nother conversation here. I don't know if you're aware, are you familiar with the rewilding
Yes,
folks? And in particular, Doug Tallamy? Do you know his work?
absolutely. I don't know him personally. I've reached out to him several times.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been thinking of doing the same thing. I think he's in a really critical spot as far as, you know, doing some of the hard science to identify those keystone species and resources that, you know, we need to lock onto in order to support the broader biodiversity picture. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because I think that's a really key one. And I don't
All
know
right.
if we can pull him into this conversation, but I think-
You know, I would love to. As I've reached out to him in part because one of my focal projects is what I call the big map to save the future. I have sort of a whole Google Earth-like thing in which all of the pins on the map are eco-restoration projects and rewilding projects and regenerative agriculture projects around the world. We currently have about 800 pins on the map. We're working on having more and more pins and beginning to capture polygons so we can begin estimating impacts. But he has his,
Okay.
well, you have a link to it in your in the chat now.
Okay.
His homegrown national park
Yes.
movement, I think, is a really great example of what needs to happen.
Yes.
And I would like to add all of his little sites to our big map. And I'm beginning to think that, since, you know, my impression is that there are many groups trying to do these very well-defined and well-defined and appropriately narrow initiatives. But all of those initiatives, like, for example, rewilding on the other hand, and homegrown national parks, they're part of something much bigger. And they're and the collection of them it doesn't seem to be anyone's responsibility right now. So I'm beginning to wonder whether that's an opportunity for the ERA to take a leadership role in the space.
Yeah, possibly. Now, I've been talking with Maureen Brendan, who's with PINA, the North American Permaculture Institute.
Okay,
I'm not saying the name right, but Permaculture Institute of North America, PINA, PINA.
got it.
Yeah. Anyway, she has a place in Florida, and this is part of the kind of behind the scenes discussion we've been having for a year now, and we're talking about the need, and she's starting to do a pilot in the state of Florida. But we're talking about, exactly. I love that there's such a convergence of thought here, because you're talking about the three-legged stool. And that's exactly the kind of thing we're talking about, which is basically very similar. Getting the network, getting the people, everybody connected, which it looks like you guys are already well on the way to doing that, which is fantastic. Second piece is getting the stories, and we include the science in that, like getting the data, the information out there, and the inspiration and the models that, show people, hey, we can do this. And then the third part is like a toolbox, basically a toolkit of, here are the nuts and bolts that, a community or an organization needs to make it happen.
Well, so yeah,
we've been talking about this for about a year now, and so Corinne has started to do some pilot work in Florida with the idea that if she creates a state level model, that other states.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, but it's possible. I mean, if we were to, connect with a global network, it might find a slightly different direction. But
I'd like to think that that there are synergies or symbioses to be had.
Exactly. Yeah.
I keep saying I'm going to let you go, and it keeps getting more interesting. So let me suggest that you reach out to Doreen. Is her name?
Corey.
Corey.
Koreen.
Okay. And when you and she are up for another conversation, let's just do it. I'd like to see where this goes.
Yeah, we actually do. Most Thursday afternoons, we have a regular Zoom every week.
Send me an invite.
Yeah.
When she's ready.
Okay, I'll check in with her.
Okay.
So yeah, no, this is fantastic. And then I just want to throw out one other piece, which I don't, again, know him personally, but I think that, are you familiar with the book Sand Talk?
I bought the book and began reading it recently. It's quite a quirky and odd book. But now that you mention it, it's probably sitting in a briefcase that's currently not with me. So I haven't looked at it since I bought it.
Well, I have to say that his ideas, and you're right, they're pretty unconventional, because he's proposing a critique of Western civilization from an indigenous perspective, which is, upwards of 40,000 years old.
It sounds like a good idea, but that doesn't mean it's easy for us to swallow, right?
No, it's not. But I love it, and I also have a long history working with indigenous communities, so I love that book, and it's really influenced me. And as you work your way through it, you find that there's a lot of structure. And he's thinking about complexity theory. He's did his PhD at university.
It's clear he has done his homework, and
he
yet
has
not been hijacked by it.
Right. No, he's a fascinating person. But anyway, I think that some of his ideas, as they fall out of the book, are very aligned with this three-legged stool we're talking about.
That's great.
Okay. On that note,
we're going to hang up on each other. I vowed not to say anything, but on that topic. You're going to reach out to Corinne, I hope, on our behalf. I also want to let you know that we're actively trying to develop and build representation of Indigenous people in the ERA. So when you mentioned that you worked with Indigenous groups, we're very conscious of of some of the ironies of what's going on right now, and of the fact that these indigenous cultures have a worldview which apparently works and the worldview that we've been working with is apparently failing now. So it's a really good time to try to broaden the conversation. So
Mhm.
I vow to say no more than great talking to you. Talk soon. You get the last
Okay,
word.
yes, thank you for reaching out, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. And let me grab the chat before, it's not letting me share it. Hang on a second.
Cole can capture it.
Oh, okay.
If you haven't been able to get it. I've had some trouble lately.
Yeah, I'm still
capturing
not getting it.
Zoom chats.
Yeah, I can.
I've got it. I've got it. I'll just send you a quick note.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay,
Okay.
well, thank you guys. Good to talk.
Great.
Thank you.
Be in touch.
Okay, bye-bye.